Bigfoot holds the title as being one of the most famous cryptids. Cryptids are creatures that are not recognized by science, with amateur researchers saying that although scientists don't believe they exist, so many people have reported them that further studies need to be conducted. Over time, Bigfoot has been used to refer to an ancient legendary creature, a giant human-ape looking figure, which is claimed to roam the dense forests of Pacific Northwest. Over the years, thousands of people have come forward with their encounters, each one matching the previous witnesses. This in turn has caused some to think that there could be a giant undiscovered ape roaming our planet, and that it uses the thick forested regions to stay hidden. Scientists have claimed that the creature bearing resemblance to an ape is a human relative, which dates back as far as 15,000 years ago. Although all of this evidence and claims are yet to be proven, it's as if Bigfoot only selects a certain type of person to reveal itself to, because every scientific endeavour to prove their existence has ended up being a futile journey. There's also been a worrying amount of individuals that have gone missing in forested regions and national parks. Not only this, but individuals have claimed to have seen large humanoids and strange sounds while at these places, causing some to put forward the idea that they prefer to live in isolated places away from humans. Those who have seen Bigfoot have reported seeing footprints and even faces, which look like that of a human, but upon closer look at the features, it's evident that it's not human. Interestingly, this has caused some to venture out into the wilderness and carry out their own experiments. One interesting image that floats around various Bigfoot groups is this one, that asks if anyone is willing to be human bait for a Bigfoot project. It turns out though that when you visit the site you are redirected back to YouTube, where Rick Astley's never gonna give you up as playing. Although in this case it was a joke, people have claimed to have offered themselves to Bigfoot. It seems though that the creatures are not really interested in humans, and do a great job at staying away from us. They're only usually encountered when someone ventures deep into forested areas. One interesting story is that of Albert Osman, who claims that he was taken by an adult Bigfoot and taken to his family. After being dragged and carried for what he believes was 3 hours, Osman was finally dropped. He described hearing 4 voices, speaking in a language he didn't understand. He also noted that it was too dark to make them out. However, as the sun came up, he got a good look. There were indeed 4 of them. He described them as an old man and an old woman, along with a young boy and a young girl. He estimated the old woman to have been 7 feet tall and 500 pounds, with the old man being even bigger. He was sure that his gun would not affect the large man, except for maybe angering him, so he sat and contemplated his escape. He managed to get out of the ordeal, and didn't tell people about his story until years later, fearing that he would be judged. Many interesting stories have come to the surface over the years involving Bigfoot. Some of these interesting accounts detail that of the military encountering Bigfoot. There have been many reported sightings of a massive legendary creature known as Bigfoot. They are mostly sighted in remote areas, sometimes in urban and very rarely in city parks. However, the most unlikely place you would think to see a Bigfoot is near a military base. Yet some researchers have argued there have been more reports of Bigfoot being sighted by military personnel than civilians. Throughout the years there have been a few reports that have leaked from military installations, mostly those around the 1970s. By far the most notable and most credible is that of an encounter near Fort Lewis in the US. This is an army military installation in Washington state, which is in the middle of a rather large wooded area. The year was 1978. A truck full of soldiers coming back from training exercises broke down at around 8 PM. Attempts were made to restart the engine, but nothing worked, so the platoon headed off to the base on foot to bring back a tow truck. They left one Edwin Goodeye to guard the truck until the tow truck arrived. He was left because he was the one who had signed out the truck, Edwin spent hours by himself just sitting in the trunk. He was bored, but this evening would soon perk up. At around midnight he began to hear strange sounds from the forest, as the truck was on a road that cut through this forest. The sounds continued to get louder and closer, prompting Edwin to get out of the truck, arming himself with a rifle and a flashlight. As he stood in front of the truck, sweeping the sides of the woods with his flashlight, he caught a glimpse of a large object moving directly in front of the truck. It was a tall, broad creature entirely covered in hair that walked by swinging its body sideways. When Erwin shined his light at the creature, it stopped in its tracks and stared directly at him. They locked eyes for a short time before the creature began to run at him at a baffling quick speed. Erwin shouted 3 times for the creature to stop and identify itself. However, the beast didn't reply and got close enough to cause harm to Erwin. Gripped with fear, he shot the creature in the chest. This barely stopped the speed of the animal. It merely growled, grabbed its chest and turned to the right and went back into the forest. In a few seconds it was gone. After a long and fearful night, the mechanics finally arrived. After Erwin conveyed what happened, they were quite skeptical until one spotted the blood trail, and this led to massive footprints pressed into the nearby soft ground. Shortly after, a radio call was made to the base explaining what had happened. The area was swamped by secretive government scientists in hazardous material suits. These researchers then began taking blood samples and setting casts of the footprints. The whole time Edwin was told not to speak to anyone, and was kept away from what was going on. After a short time, Edwin was quickly taken to the base hospital, but surprisingly, instead of being examined by the base's medical staff, he was examined by a doctor from the Air Force that held the rank of full colonel. Years later, Edwin went on to reveal in an interview after the event had been declassified that rather than interrogating him, the colonel was very interested in every slight detail of the event, after which Edwin was returned to his barracks and told in no circumstances was he to tell anyone what had happened. So what do you make of these interesting Bigfoot stories, and do you think there's any truth to them? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below, and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.